So another approach that I thought was pretty cool is it's not tied specifically to OpenAI. You can use it really with any prompt enabled model. Was that something that you wanted to do from day one, or is that another thing that was kind of user added? They said, hey,
Oh
you know
yeah.
what?
So this was absolutely from day one. Um, I wouldn't have ever started the project unless I knew that it could be decoupled from a proprietary service. If you
Mm,
look at the code, it uses an interface to all AI. OpenAI was just the first publicly available implementation to program against. However, what we're seeing now is that a lot more people want to use our local AI support, which is for models you run on your own computer, right? So
yeah.
as Hugging Face, the French startup who have a lot of these models, have started releasing things like GPT for all. We're also seeing Facebook and Llama and these other models are coming out for free. We're seeing a really interesting trend in the market where the open source community's ability to train models quickly is far outstripping these commercial platforms. And so therefore people want to use local models. And yeah, we're now seeing that our local AI backend support is just skyrocketing.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and something that I've been playing around with a little bit has been like that Hugging Fast Face, Open Chat, and these other ones. And it seems like there was a leak from Google a little while ago. They leaked some memos internally where they talked about the fact that there was nothing defensible
Mhm.
in AI right now, that they could essentially mimic and recreate all of this stuff with open source. And coming to Hugging Face, they just released so that they have this open chat, and they just updated their evaluation, and they say that they have 105% of GPT-4
Mhm.
evaluation in scoring. And I don't know how accurate that is. I've seen people talk about this and say, yeah, it's just really good at mimicking the style of voice of ChatGPT. It's not actually as intuitive and creative as ChatGPT is. But I wasn't sure if that was like just smoke, or if that's real. So I don't know if you've evaluated these different models, but
So I think that the way that models are being changed is changing dramatically from GPU approach to potentially even CPU based training. But also, we're starting to think about building more specific models for situations. These are often called task orientated, right? So, task oriented AI. And with that comes the ability to have a more narrow subset of parameters, right? So, instead of 12 billion parameters, you could take that down to perhaps 300 million or so. And what that lets you do is to start to build AI that really synthesize the kind of outputs that you're looking for and mimicry outputs. OpenChat, however, is the kind of more classical approach of looking at being a real LLM like ChatGPT with DaVinci and with GPT 3.5 Turbo. But the challenge there is that they are also going to have to consume a very large corpus of data to train those models on, because legally now OpenAI has said we don't want people training models off of our API, which is actually something people were starting to do for a very brief window of time.
yeah.
And so I think really one of the key issues that's going to really stifle adoption of these commercial models and even some of these pre-trained models in the open source world is just where did the data come from, whose data is it, and how was it trained? Because I think that's the new horizon that we're facing, is that any model you didn't train yourself, it's very difficult to understand exactly what its pedigree is and where it's come from. So even OpenChat, you got to ask the question, how was it trained?
I'm not sure if I've seen anybody that has the right heuristic for thinking about training models licensing, because if I think about AI in terms of artificial intelligence, it's what it is. If I have a person, they go to Cornell and they study with these professors and they read these books. And when they come out of that and they do all of this research and they read all these different things, they have this corpus of knowledge that now we feel belongs to them. That's they went and learned it. That was their part. That knowledge existed. They paid for access. They paid in time. Maybe they had to pay to go to university. Maybe they just joined a library and they just exist as a person, whatever it is. But that knowledge, once they've consumed it, it's theirs and it's not someone else's. And it seems like we this is kind of blurring the line between copyright, where it's like, hey, you can't reprint somebody else's book without permission, but you can generate a book that learned off of this model, that you can generate a new book off of reading several other books. And so did they violate copyright in doing that? Or is there, do they owe royalties or some kind? Because I don't owe royalties, right? For my learning experience, I don't owe royalties to my third grade teacher who helped me learn how to read or whatever. You know what I mean? So I don't know that I've heard anybody come out with a heuristic that makes sense to me to say OpenAI shouldn't be allowed to read the open internet without paying for people. It's like, well, you made it open. They were allowed to read it. Even if they just paid, you know, a single user seat for their AI to go and learn something, it seems like that would be fair game. But I don't know if you have if you've heard a better heuristic for this.
I think it's, so firstly, no. But I was just thinking about, you know, with the things that are going on with companies like Reddit, right, where they're locking down the API because people are training AI off of it. Mm-hmm. We're seeing that with Twitter as well, right? And so many companies, I think, are responding to this by taking away the ability to have the cheap, you know, API access and start to build models based off that. And I don't know necessarily if that's the most sustainable solution. Also, I think just back to your university example, there's a really stark difference between knowledge and intelligence, right? These AI are effectively knowledge bases. They're crystallized finite state machines, effectively.
Yeah.
If you could map every single parameter in and find every single permutation of that parameter, you would understand every single outcome permutation, right? Where the differentiator happens is in the temperature and the amount of chaos and randomness that you can inject. And part of that processing and learning phase is where we're starting to see the innovation, right? You came, I think you mentioned, or might have come across that idea of it, you know, the novel solution in AI, where they come out with a novel solution, and that's the intelligence part, right? Actually taking some context and coming out with something that wasn't already pre-programmed. And I think as we start to really invest, you know, hundreds of thousands of hours from AI researchers and machine learning and data scientists, you know, every day of the year across the world, we're going to start to see that these models are iterating faster and faster and really starting to show the signs of having novel solutions. And as I mentioned earlier, with task-oriented AI specifically. Now, as to a heuristic around the actual quality of the data, I think there will be a way of actually embedding the programming data that you're using, so that, and the weights that are being trained against, as almost like an S-bomb, right? Almost a way of mapping how that model has been created. But I don't have the answer here today, but I suspect that it will be something that with enough demand, there'll be a way of almost like having a signature to attest that where the data has come from. And just one final remark is that there are already companies who let you do the sort of labeling for the training data. You can do metadata relabeling to anonymize it. And that I think is going to be a really key feature as well. As people start to train their own models, you can take a bunch of production user data, scrub it, and make it more generic so that the model can be trained on it.
Well, I thought that was another cool feature in K8sGPT, is that there's just a flag to anonymize data. And I, you know, didn't dig into how that worked exactly, but I thought, oh, well, that's nice, because I could see a lot of people wanting to use this tool saying, I don't want to share this data with OpenAI or with whomever, but if it's anonymized, maybe they feel more comfortable with it.